Jurassic Park was one of those SNES games that I always had kind of a love-hate relationship with. It's actually got a lot of really good things going for it, but it's just marred by a few creative decisions that make the game more tedious than it probably needs to be. I'll get into all of that, but first I feel like it's important to put yourself in the time and place that this game was released in. Jurassic Park was a really big deal when it first came out. Nowadays, we're all kind of burnt out on CGI action sequences in films, and some filmmakers are trying to get back to more practical special effects, but this was when movie studios were just starting to get their foothold on using CGI special effects in movies the way we know now. It made for some truly special results in films such as The Abyss or Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Then comes Jurassic Park in 1993, where you're finally getting a proper dinosaur movie, and it just totally dominated everything. It was the highest grossing film of the year by a long shot and went on to gross nearly $1 billion. I was just the right age for it at the time, too. What 13-year-old wasn't infatuated by dinosaurs? So, of course, with this gigantic film taking over pop culture also came the merchandise. Toys, lunchboxes, keychains, mugs, whatever, you name it. It probably had a Jurassic Park logo on it at some point.
Before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I didn't care so much about all of that, but along with the merchandise came the video games. Virtually every console at the time got some sort of iteration of Jurassic Park. I had just purchased a Super Nintendo with my hard-earned allowance money in the year or so leading up to the game's 1993 release, so I only had maybe a couple of games by that point. Then I'm shopping for a new game and I see Jurassic Park sitting there on the shelf. It looked too good to pass up. The box art was simple enough, just a picture of a dinosaur and the familiar Jurassic Park logo. But what really got my attention was this, the promise of Dolby Surround. In a video game? What? Okay, we'll get to that. Then on the back cover, the game promises first-person interiors similar to Wolfenstein 3D. At the time, I was infatuated with all things Wolfenstein. Even though I didn't own a computer that could actually run it, a friend had it, so the idea of slamming together Wolfenstein and Jurassic Park into a video game that I could play on my Super NES totally blew my mind, and I had to own it. This was totally an impulse buy for me. No rental, the game box just sold me. Does the game actually live up to all of that? Well, probably not, no. But it does have some good things going for it. So, you play as Alan Grant from the movie, and the general look of the game is very well detailed. Your character actually looks like Alan Grant. The majority of the game is top-down action where you're wandering around the park blasting dinosaurs. It's not unlike Zombies Ate My Neighbors, though not nearly as hectic and fast-paced. You also get a wide variety of weapons. Remember when Alan Grant went around mowing down dinosaurs with a rocket launcher? You get a primary and secondary weapon, as well as the default stun gun that you can use on the little guys. The dinosaurs all look and act like you would expect them to, and pretty much all of the dinos from the movie are featured. Raptors, spitters, triceratops, the compies that are in the book but not in the movie. Heck, they even included the poisonous plants. And of course, there's a T-Rex. The dinosaurs all look good, and so do the locations. They included a number of locations like the iconic Jurassic Park gate, the Visitors Center, and the Raptor Pen. And the music. Ocean really nailed it with the music, and all of the tracks just sound good. When I think of some of the higher quality soundtracks on the SNES and just that really detailed 16-bit quality, man, this game's soundtrack is just really freaking good. So where did it all go wrong? Well, for starters, the game gives you very few clues on where you're supposed to be going, so this could be confusing for a lot of people, especially if you're trying to play it now. Jurassic Park is open world and you're free to roam around the island at your leisure. You can touch these motion sensors around the park to activate communications with the other characters from the movie, but these are usually pretty cryptic, and most of the time they just get in the way when you're trying to fight dinosaurs. Sometimes they just pop up on their own too, and usually at the worst possible time, meaning you'll probably miss whatever they said anyway. You'll really need to spend a few minutes with the instruction manual. The manual outlines all of the various tasks you need to complete before you can get off the island. Activate the motion sensors, secure the Visitors Center, stop raptors from escaping on the boat, nerve gas the raptor's nest, radio the mainland for help, and then get to the chopper. You do get a map, although it's not very detailed compared to the actual maze-like areas in-game. Some of these tasks may not make sense to fans of the movie, but actually they borrowed pretty heavily from some of the plot elements in the book, and that's kinda cool. There was a plot from the book where some of the raptors had gotten on the boat that was headed for mainland, and also one part where Alan went out on the island looking for raptor nests. Heck, there's even a part in the book where the Muldoon character blows away a raptor with a rocket launcher, and he uses a modified rocket launcher with tranquilizer darts to take down the T-Rex. Seriously, the book version of Muldoon was a badass, and I could go on a whole rant about that. But anyway, so if you're a fan of the book over the movie, there's a lot for you to chew on in this game. But I can't get through this without mentioning the game's most awkward parts, and that's the interior areas of the buildings. So as you're roaming around the island trying to complete all of these random tasks, you'll have to occasionally enter buildings. This is where the game goes into first-person Wolfenstein 3D mode. The screenshot on the back cover made this all look pretty sweet, but in execution, it's not great. Okay, so the one cool thing about these areas is the surround sound. I mentioned before the box promised Dolby surround sound, and it really does have that, sorta. Honestly, I have no idea how it works as true surround sound since the SNES only outputs left and right 2-channel audio, but when you're inside a building and a dinosaur roars to the left or right, it really does sound like they're in that direction. I had this old stereo receiver and some beat up shoddy speakers my parents had given me when I was a kid, and I'd figured out how to run the audio from my SNES directly to the receiver, so I thought I was pretty cool with this game and my surround sound. Even though the 3D graphics weren't great, I remember being blown away by the immersive sound effects in those interior areas. But that's about the only good thing about these areas. The controls are awkward and your character is all slow. It can be really tough to turn around if you're being attacked from behind. Thankfully, the dinosaur AI is terrible. Seriously, the raptors are supposed to be all smart, but they'll just stand there staring at you or walk back and forth until you get too close. Also, in order to get this to even run on Super Nintendo hardware, they had to shrink your viewing area down to about a third of the screen size.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
And it gets worse from there. A big part of these interior areas revolves around accessing these computer terminals.
It's an interactive CD-ROM!
Yay, you spaz! Each building has one or more computer terminals that you have to access at one point or another, but then sometimes you need a specific keycard just to even get to the computer terminal. This game involves a lot of backtracking and only certain terminals can do certain things. You may get a third of the way through clearing out all the raptors on the boat before realizing you need to backtrack to the visitor center to pick up a certain keycard or get to a different computer terminal so you can find level 1 or level 2 security clearance, whatever that means.
You didn't say the magic word.
Please! God damn it! I hate this hacker crap.
And most of the buildings have a dark section where you need to find batteries for your night vision goggles. But that's not a one and done thing. You've got to find batteries every time you enter a new building for some reason. Hammond, you cheapskate, did you buy all ever-ready batteries?
Top of the line.
Spared no expense.
So yeah, it feels like a lot of this backtracking stuff with the keycards and security clearances was just busy work to make you have to make extra trips across the island and make the game seem longer. None of this would be so bad if the game had some sort of auto map feature so you could keep track of where all you've been, kinda like in Super Metroid, and worst of all, there's no save feature. So yeah, whenever you sat down to play Jurassic Park, you basically just had to make sure you had at least a few hours set aside to try and get through the game in one sitting because there was no save or password feature. I can remember many a Saturday afternoon where invariably I'd have to leave the console running while I was doing chores around the house or outside mowing the lawn. I'd have to leave a note on the console begging my parents not to turn it off. Come on guys, geez, I'm trying to beat Jurassic Park here.
Spared no expense.
So yeah, Jurassic Park on Super Nintendo, it's not an awful game by any stretch, and with the fantastic music and slower pace, it's kind of a nice sit down and chill SNES game. With a few tweaks, I think it could have even been a really good survival horror game. Just know what you're getting yourself into with this one, and there's a few things you can do to make the experience a little smoother. For weapons, you'll primarily want to stick with the bola and the rocket launcher as those are one-shot kills, and the bola has a nice wide shot radius for when the raptors are spazzing all over the place. Also, the dinosaurs don't respawn inside the buildings, but the power-ups do, so you can just re-enter buildings and keep grabbing ammo. Even though your HUD only shows a certain amount of ammo icons, you can pretty much hold infinity ammo. There's this one secret spot in the cliffs on your way to the boat where you'll find some ammo and an extra guy, so just keep re-entering that over and over again until you have enough to beat the game. Also, apparently the interior areas are compatible with the Super NES mouse. I've never tried this, but maybe it will make it a little easier to control inside the buildings. I just found this out recently too, but if you're willing to take the pacifist route and use only tranquilizer darts on all of the dinosaurs in the overworld areas, they'll just never respawn. Eventually, you could get to a point where virtually all of the inside dinosaurs are dead, and all of the exterior dinosaurs are tranked out, and you'd just be wandering around this deserted island, picking up your ID cards and messing with computer terminals. So, would you enjoy playing Jurassic Park on Super Nintendo now? Well, I don't know. Fans of the book have something to think about here, since Ocean did borrow a lot of elements from that version of the story. As a kid, this was one of the only games I owned for a good long time, so I just kinda had to force myself to play it despite its faults, and eventually I did beat it. Like I said, it was a love-hate thing. Solid graphics and great music, just wish they had changed a few things around to make the ride a little more accessible. What did you think of this one? Did you play this game growing up, or try to get into it more recently? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, especially from someone who just now went back and tried to play this today for the first time. As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.